Jim Jordan swings twice, misses both times, a little worse the second time. It does appear there will be a vote tomorrow. Is that going to be his last try?
You would think so, right? Because Republicans, you'll figure that Republicans are under a lot of stress and pressure right now. I mean, the setup that you all just outlined kind of puts it in stark terms. There's this split screen of the unrest in Israel, the fact that the U.S. knows it needs to deliver some type of aid, and then a rudderless Congress, right? So at some point, you have to save face, no matter how quarrelsome you are. And we know that Jim Jordan is quarrelsome, but at some point, we can't have another 15 rounds like we saw in January.
Well, and of course, back in January, Mario, it was 15 rounds compressed into 4 days. And what we're getting right now is 1 vote per day. The pace of progress is really slow. And as Joe said, we're not expecting another vote until tomorrow at noon. Speaker Pro Tem McHenry just told our Bloomberg reporters that there is no plan for the House Republicans to meet tonight. Are we going to see this speed up at some point?
I don't think so. I don't think we're going to see those images from C-SPAN, right, where there was this marathon of votes, right?
Come on, make it happen.
Again, just going back to the fact of the optics in this very moment. McHenry is a sober leader. He may end up being the leader. He's the interim leader, at least right now. But, I mean, the optics, again, for a party 13 months out from a presidential election, it's asking for the keys to the White House again. And this type of show, I think at some point we're going to just see it kind of gradually unfold. Yeah. We'll see Jordan probably go ahead and defer to someone else.
Well, let's go to the floor. Before that happens, Oklahoma Congressman Tom Cole praising Jim Jordan earlier in his introductory speech for the Ohio Republican this morning. Here he is.
It takes a spine of steel to do this job. My friend has that kind of determination, has that kind of character, has that kind of spine. And I think the next speaker is going to need that quality, and I know my friend has it in great abundance.
And then he failed while everyone was watching once again. Julie Fine, how does this level of dysfunction, if we can call it that, go over with the electorate?
I think level of dysfunction is the perfect way to explain it. I don't think it goes over with the electorate very well. I mean, first of all, you're already seeing Democrats pouncing on this. There are Republicans in swing districts that are voting against Jim Jordan. But what I'm also seeing here are Republicans not in swing districts. So I think the level of dysfunction. Also, when you look at what's happening on the world stage, you see this, as Mario said, moving extremely slowly when aid is needed for the Middle East, for Ukraine. So the dysfunction is not going to sit well with the electorate, especially with everything going on in the world right now. And the question really does remain, you're not even seeing several votes a day. You saw Jim Jordan last night. Nothing changed today. It actually got worse for him. So what's going to change for tomorrow?
Yeah, we'll see how things evolve on Capitol Hill. But of course, there's also the evolving situation in the Middle East where President Biden was today in Israel. We're getting headlines now that Biden's going to be addressing the nation at 8 p.m. Eastern time on Israel, that coming from the White House. But we, of course, heard from him earlier today as well, specifically discussing that hospital implosion that happened in Tel Aviv just on the cusp of Biden arriving there. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
I was outraged and saddened by the enormous loss of life yesterday in the hospital in Gaza. Based on the information we've seen to date, it appears the result of an errant rocket fired by a terrorist group in Gaza. The United States unequivocally stands for the protection of civilian life during conflict, and I truly grieve for the families.
Mario, the president also intended to not just visit Israel, but Jordan. That leg of the trip was canceled in the aftermath of this explosion we saw at the hospital and the traded blame we saw from both sides. Did he accomplish enough of what he set out to today? It
was uneven. This was his second visit to a war zone this year. This was a lot different than the Ukraine one, right? Where he came back triumphant, the images that he had, he was able to keep support for Ukraine in this war. And this one, again, he went over with the with the goal of espousing American support for its closest ally in the Middle East, being Israel, but also to kind of counterweight, if you will, with the Arab leaders as well. So the fact that the hospital bombing yesterday, the fallout from that, the reaction of the White House to side with Israel, even though the president did cite intelligence for that, it didn't sit well with the Arab leaders. So the goal of at least counterbalancing this visit with the Arab leaders in the region, he did not achieve that.
So we understand the president is going to be making that address tomorrow. He's on his way back right now, Kailey. Pretty important here, considering the request that the White House is about to make for Israel as well as Ukraine. We've heard $100 billion for a price tag. Julie Fine. It strikes me if there was ever a time for a primetime address, we're seeing this would be 8 p.m. The venue would be the Oval Office. What would be the message to the American people?
Really, the message to the American people is please support this effort. Try to understand what is happening to the best that you can. And the president really has to explain what he saw, why he feels the way he does with the information he is getting from intelligence, and really basically say the United States is here to try to stabilize what is happening in the world and save human life at the same time. So he's really got to get the American people on board with the fact that he believes they're doing the right thing. He's also sending a message to Congress that they have to get this aid package done, which again then goes to some dysfunction right now in Congress.